Hello and welcome to this bite-sized session from Access Training. We're part of Access Wellbeing Services, and we've produced a range of on-demand, short training sessions, especially for clients, to complement our Employee Assistance Programme, which provides counselling and support to management and staff of a whole range of organisations here in Perth, WA. These short sessions are designed to give you food for thought while you're taking a break, and you can watch them on your own, with a colleague, or as part of a team meeting. This bite-sized session focuses on an important aspect of communication, the value of the pause, ensuring that your response to a situation or to a question is a rational one, rather than a knee-jerk reaction. Today we'll be focusing our attention on what we are doing, reacting or responding. What physiological basis do we have for doing each? And what's preferable? Then we'll look at using the pause button as a means to buy us time. And in that time we've bought, we can seek to monitor and enhance our self-awareness. We'll then finishing up with some practical strategies to put in place, giving you a whole range to choose from. This session is one of our newest courses, has been designed by the training team at Access Wellbeing Services, drawing on the skills and experience of the clinical staff, the psychologists and counsellors there. Our practice is evidence-based, which means we don't just say or do stuff, we know there's a reason for the stuff we say or do. And that applies to our trainings also. I won't highlight many of the studies by name, but rest assured the clinical and academic underpinnings are there. My role here today is to pull together all the fuzzy tangled information and set it out for you in a nice, neat, ordered fashion, so it can be filed away and used by you in the future. What do we mean by contrasting responding with reacting? Well, for starters, imagine you go back to see your doctor a month after starting some medication. Your doctor says, so the tests show you're reacting to the medication. Say what? Or your doctor says, the tests show you're responding to the medication. Now that sounds better. That's actually one of Zig Ziglar's stories. He's not a circus ringmaster or a pirate like his name suggests, well, to me at least, but an American author, salesman and motivational speaker. Check him out, he's pretty inspirational. So reacting, as you can see here, comes from the most basic, earliest formed part of our brain. Where we need to move towards is responding. This is making a conscious choice. And as we'll see shortly, this is controlled by the more recently evolved parts of our brain. Who knows, that spider might not be venomous. We might have a baby in our arms or a hot cup of coffee and we don't want to be leaping around, waving our arms around and shrieking. Besides, spiders are apparently more scared of you than you are of them, although I'm sceptical about that one. If we simplify the evolution of our brain down massively and put scientific debate to one side for a moment, our brains can be said to be made up of 3 levels. The oldest, most basic level is the reptilian brain, which served us well, keeping us alive 500 million years ago or so. Then, 200 million years later, the limbic system evolved, developing right on top of that reptilian brain. Then, only a mere 3.5 million years ago, Homo sapiens had a major growth spurt in the brain department, and the neocortex was formed. These developments moved us from reacting and instinctual behaviour and gave us the ability to respond, although only the ability. We still sometimes have to force ourselves to not just react. Responding involves making a conscious choice, and it is controlled by the more evolved parts of our brain. As I just said in that very simplified summary of the process of evolution, our reptilian brain was the first part of our brain. It kept us safe. We didn't get eaten, and we survived to live another day. That reptilian brain reacts to perceived threats in whatever way will probably keep us safe. That can be described as the fight, flight or freeze reactive mode. This was a good thing to keep our ancestors alive. Catch a glimpse of something orange and stripy and we're off like the wind. However, in today's world, perceived threats may happen all too often. When something happens in the environment to cause you to feel threatened, ranging from someone cutting you off in traffic to a co-worker making a critical remark, your reptilian brain activates in the fight or flight reactive mode. The same mechanism kicks in when you feel under pressure, worried, irritated or disappointed. This not only makes you feel rubbish and can lead to anxiety and depression, but it's lousy for your physical health, as chronic stress contributes to a weakened immune system and increased risk of heart attack and stroke. And when the reactive reptile brain takes over, the more developed part of our brain, the human cortex, which is all about attachment and getting on with others, is kicked out of the way. And if we were to attribute independent feelings towards it, we'd say it feels abandoned. It seems like we don't need it anymore. The reptilian reactive part has our actions all sewn up, thank you very much, and keeps us very well engaged in our fight, flight, or freeze reaction. When, however, you take a moment to just restrain that reaction and instead decide to deliberately deploy a response, your reptilian brain stops running around in circles shouting "don't panic" and is instead nice and calm because it's all under control. And your more evolved human cortex is in its element, dealing with things and maintaining attachments. So your brain is happy. The good news, this should be our natural resting state. The bad news, for many of us, it doesn't feel like it. It feels like we're always in reactive mode, waiting for the next attack. We can't help reacting most of the time. What we can help most of the time is acting on this reaction and feeding it further. In the short term, the trick is to become aware of this initial reaction and resist doing anything. For a second, half a minute, a few hours, however long you can reasonably take, hit that pause button. Involve your higher intelligence by considering options, possible consequences, who you want to be, and what is going to be in your best interest. And then choose how to respond. Do you know, even just pausing long enough to take a deep breath can be enough to convince your body that you have control before you take the action you need to. Interestingly, research has shown that practicing mindfulness techniques increases the size of the prefrontal cortex, which is one of the areas used for responding rather than reacting. It also shrinks the size of the amygdala, which is one of the emergency buttons in the middle of the limbic system, at the forefront of our fight or flight response. And its connection gets weaker. So even though the button might still be pressed, it's easier to resist and sends out a weaker signal. So that's the impact of mindfulness practice. Only about 8 weeks worth is sufficient to turn down the amygdala's volume, according to a study by Adrian Tarin in 2013. But that's not much use to you right here, right now. Or more specifically, maybe in a couple of hours when somebody sends you the 4th email in a row, asking really basic questions you've answered before. What you really want to do is tap out a short and slightly aggressive response, which might or might not involve the "let me Google that for you" webpage. So, I repeat, in the short term, you need to pause. Buying time. No, not going out to buy a watch, although my husband seems to do that pretty successfully online now. Buying time to be able to deploy a considered response, not a reaction. Let's take a quick example of receiving an email, which on the face of it demands an immediate response. What do you do? Have these 3 things for buying time ready in your respond kit bag, and you'll be much better able to withstand the siren's call of react. The non-response response. This is an acknowledgement, but really is only filler. It can be useful, at least the sender knows you've received it, but it may aggravate somebody or be inappropriate. The expectation setter. This is often a good middle ground. It provides an immediate response of acknowledgement and resets the timetable. And finally, the confident pause. Don't respond. Really, just don't. Pausing for 24 hours is a pretty good rule of thumb. Not responding is its own kind of response, which can often work to your advantage and train people not to expect an immediate response or reaction. But know your audience for this one. Your boss will probably not be impressed. And while you're pausing, consider the role of perception, the filters you might be unconsciously deploying. Make a real effort to identify anything that may be affecting your perceptions. Are you leaping to conclusions because the other person is young or old or reminds you of somebody you never got on with? What's really behind that knee-jerk reaction? And before you leap to conclusions and act on them, don't forget to communicate, clarify the situation, It might completely change your response. Hindsight is famously 20/20. It usually sees the truth of the bigger picture. So take a moment to gather the information you'll realise with hindsight you needed. Pop yourself into the future in your imagination, look back with that 20/20 vision, and see what the best response would probably have been. During your response preparation time, you will be managing your emotions. But managing emotions isn't about pushing them under the carpet. It's about having strategies in place allowing you to use them effectively, rather than letting them influence your behaviours unduly and influence your actions too much. It's pretty hard to manage something you're not aware of, so it's important that we're on the lookout for our emotions so we know when they are likely to pop up and we can identify them when they do appear. So here are some practical ways in which we can gain self-awareness. Some of these you may have done in the past, but remember you'll now be doing them with a fresh perspective. Keep a diary or just jot down notes of how you're feeling through the day. You might find yourself particularly snappy mid-morning. Why might that be? Is it when you're getting hungry? In which case you could try a more filling, long-lasting breakfast or pack a healthy snack. Or is it just after a regular meeting with someone who always manages to push your buttons? Remember, you can't control other people, but you can control your responses to them. Emotions are in passing and they shouldn't be the foundation of communication or decision-making. Often we don't notice we're being affected until we're quite stressed or drained. Don't email angry or even worse, drunk text. Do you know you can actually set your Outlook email account to delay sending messages for as long as you choose? You set up a new rule through the File tab, then the Manage Rules and Alerts button. This can then impose a certain duration of delay to sending them. Maybe give yourself a 10-minute cooling off period to rethink an email. Might save you some embarrassment. That needn't be forever. You'll start to recognise if there are certain emails you find yourself glad of the delay on. So it's up to you to work out why and then address that. In the meantime, you can tweak the rule to be only on messages sent to your boss, for example, or to your mum. Notice the effect of your behaviour on others. You may be blissfully unaware of other people's feelings, but they may be painfully aware of yours. Putting people on edge and having them walk on eggshells around you in case they upset you is a bad thing in your personal life, and most definitely unacceptable in your working life. Think about ways you can manage your emotions whilst at work, so you don't demonstrate knee-jerk reactions or make inappropriate comments. Even just a blink or tapping your hand or wrist can be enough to catch yourself and stop yourself broadcasting your emotions inappropriately. But be careful. Even small actions or gestures are tells. They give information about your emotions or your state of mind or your thoughts. Observant colleagues or associates might pick them up. So start working on that poker face. It will stand you in good stead. Remember, your emotions are your natural guidance system. They're more effective when you don't try to fight them, but recognise them and use them for good. Work spent on your self-awareness will pay you back handsomely. On a workplace level, responding and not reacting is crucial. Let the mud settle, let the water clear. And keep these two guidelines in mind. Keep out of office politics, drama or conflict. Don't let your desire to be part of the group undermine your integrity and professional behaviour. Keep those emotions under control and stay professional. And acceptance. This is a bit of a tough one for most people. But once you've accepted that uncertainty and frustrations and disappointments are just part of any work environment, you will feel calmer and more accepting, at least in the short term. And once you feel calmer, rather than complaining or acting out, brainstorm alternatives or solutions that might be beneficial to you and your workplace. And that will help you feel calmer in the long run. And so here we are at the end. This bite-sized learning has been brought to you by Access Training, part of Access Wellbeing Services. We offer training, counselling and employee assistance services to a whole range of organisations across Western Australia. Why not check out more on our website or download our app, available on Apple and Android devices. Search for RESILNZ or give us a call.